wondered what figgy pudding is or plum pudding? I know I did for the longest time because we don't eat that here in the United States. It's a classic British Christmas time dessert, which is why it's in all of those Christmas carols that you've heard. This recipe is from the British Cookbook. It's essentially a steamed cake that's filled with dried fruit, those wintertime Christmassy spices, as well as liquor and alcohol. And then it's topped with this delicious, what's called hard sauce or brandy sauce, which is a very thick, creamy, almost, and it's made with a roux type sauce. So it's super interesting. If you've never had it before, it definitely makes you feel like you're eating something from a Charles Dickens book. So let's go ahead and hop into the kitchen. I'm going to show you how to make it. We're going to begin making our Christmas pudding with a large bowl, and we're going to mix together all of the dry ingredients. I recommend for recipes like this, doing this by weight if you have a kitchen scale rather than by cups or measuring spoons or anything like that, at least for the heavier items. So we've got 2 ounces of golden raisins, 2 ounces of regular raisins, as well as 4.5 ounces of dried currants. This is beef suet, which I had to shop around a little bit for, but I did find it at a chain grocery store. Suet is a very British ingredient, and we're going to have a couple of those in this recipe. Now we're going to put in 4.5 ounces of dark brown sugar, as well as 2.25 ounces of breadcrumbs. And now we're going to spice the pudding mix. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/2 teaspoon of mixed spice, which is a specific spice mixture that is also a very British ingredient. I was able to find this at Walmart, so it's not terribly difficult to find. And we're just going to mix all these ingredients together to get them in kind of an even distribution here. Now we're going to add some fresh fruit to our pudding mixture. So we're going to put about 7 ounces of a tart apple that's been peeled and grated. This is a Granny Smith apple. The recipe calls for Bramley apples, which, at least in my part of the United States, are a little bit difficult to find. They're a British cultivar. So the closest substitute would be the tart Granny Smith, which looks just like this big old tart green apple. We're also going to put the zest of 1/2 of a lemon, as well as the zest of 1/2 of an orange, with that juice from 1/2 of an orange in there as well. And we're just going to get all this mixed up so that those breadcrumbs and everything else begin to absorb some of the juices from that fruit. Now, in a small bowl, I've cracked an egg, and to that we're going to add 1.25 ounce of sweet sherry wine, as well as 1.75 ounces of rum. And then we're just going to whisk all of that together. And with that liquid whisked together, we're going to go ahead and add it to our pudding mixture. And we're going to get all that mixed up. And you really want to get all that sloshed around so you get as much of an even distribution as possible in all of this. And what we're going to do now, once we get all that mixed up, is we're going to put this in the refrigerator overnight. We're going to cover it, and we're going to let that marinate and let these flavors really soak and incorporate with each other. This is a pudding mold, which I have greased with butter quite heavily because this is going to go in the steamer for quite a long time. If you've never seen one of these, if you want to get into British baking, I would recommend getting one. They come with this nice little lid. You can use other containers as well, but there's really it's not going to come out as perfect as it is if you use a pudding mold. So we're going to go ahead and take our mixture and go ahead and fill up that pudding mold. And once we get it all in, we will press down to really get a nice condensed material. That's all in, and now we're going to go ahead and just seal it with the lid, and we're going to head over to the stove. We've got a big pot of water. I've got this on high because I want to bring this to a boil, and we're going to go ahead and take our pudding, and we're going to suspend it in that water. And once we bring this to a boil, we're then going to turn it down to a simmer, and we're going to let this steam for 5 hours. So make sure you're topping off the water periodically so that it still runs up the sides of your pudding basin. And I'll see you guys on the other side of 5 hours. Now I'm going to make the hard sauce, also known as brandy sauce, that's going to go over the top of our pudding. So we're going to begin by melting 2 ounces of butter, which is about half a stick. And we're going to let that continue to melt until it's foaming. You can see the butter is starting to bubble and foam. So now we're going to put in 2 ounces of all-purpose flour. And we're just going to whisk that and continually cook it for about 3 minutes and almost make like a roux. When our roux gets to this point, we're going to go ahead and put in 2 ounces of sugar and just continually whisk that until it gets entirely incorporated. You should end up with a thick paste, almost with the texture of Play-Doh. And now we've got 2 cups of milk plus 1 tablespoon, and we're just going to slowly whisk that in. The last ingredient we're going to add to our sauce is a little bit of brandy. You can do this to taste. I just like a little bit of a hint of brandy in there, just a splash. And then we're going to go ahead and continue to cook this and get it reduced down until we get the consistency that we would like for our sauce. I prefer a bit of a thicker sauce, but if you like a runnier sauce, you definitely can stop at this point. This is about the thickness where I like it, where if you stick a spoon in it, you can see how thick that is. It's still runny. It'll continue to thicken even more as it cools down. But you can see how it's almost like soft peaks as it goes through. It leaves swirls that you can still visibly see. That's where I like to stop. At this point, I'm going to run it through a sieve to get any lumps of flour out so we've got a nice smooth sauce, and then we're going to go ahead and set it aside and use it at the end of our recipe. We've got our pudding, and we're ready to invert it. So I'm going to put a plate under there, and moment of truth. Oh yeah, that looks perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And that's how you get that classic shape too, is using those pudding molds. It's really, really key to this dessert. I've turned off the lights for dramatic effect because this is kind of the tradition of Christmas pudding. And we're going to get a warm ladle of high-proof alcohol like brandy or whiskey. And we're going to light it on fire and pour that all over the top and let it burn itself out. Now that the fireworks are over, we're just going to get our container of hard sauce here, and we're just going to drizzle that across the top so that it starts to dribble down the sides a little bit. You don't need to go nuts. This is, to some extent, this is just going to make it look pretty and like the traditional Christmas pudding. There's going to be a lot of leftover sauce, and we're going to serve that with the pudding as we cut slices of it later. And here we go. This is our British Christmas pudding. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I enjoyed making it. This is one of my favorite things to make at Christmas time, specifically because it just tastes like some old-timey, hundreds of years ago, Charles Dickens on a plate Christmas, and that's a very good thing. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a Happy New Year.